Hi everyone, welcome back to Cardvoyant. I'm Kris and I'm your Cardvoyant, and once again, thank you for being here. So, I would like to do something a little bit different today, and I've actually thought about this for a long time. And if you follow me, um, you know that I don't often step into sort of the political field. I For a lot of reasons, but that's not something that I generally do. However, I had this idea of doing a reading talking about and asking about actually Donald Trump's past lives, in the idea of really just some way of helping us have a better understanding of him, of his actions, of some of the things that are going on, hopefully. So, when I do past life readings, I use these cards. They are my Russian Tarot of St. Petersburg, and they're not specifically past life cards. I use them because they just give me that atmosphere of sort of past life material. So I use them almost exclusively when I do past life readings. Sometimes when I do regular readings, I'll get some past life material and talk about it a little bit. But these are specifically for this. I will say that I know that anything sort of past life-ish sometimes is difficult for some people because they don't quite, or they haven't quite moved into a space where they believe that, or have a hard time sort of, it's like, I believe this and this and this, or I'll try this and this and this, but when you start talking about that certain topic, and it can be a number of things, but if you're feeling that way about past lives and reincarnation in general, you can always think of this metaphorically, and it might still be helpful to you. So what I wanted to do is ask my guides to help me with interpretation and so forth, and ask Donald Trump's guides to help us understand which one of his past lives is most affecting this life. And the whole idea is to really to gain some understanding. This isn't sort of looking for some character, evil character or something that he was in a past life. Not at all. This is about us understanding him better. And I also feel when I do something like this, when I'm asking for somebody else, and I always sort of say this when I'm connecting with guides, is of course what you feel that it's appropriate to share with us, right? This is private stuff, some of this, so it's what is appropriate for us to know, what it would be good for us to know, what it would help us to know. So with that, I am going to begin shuffling. This is, if you've seen me work before, this is when I connect with my guides, and I will try to connect with Donald Trump's guides. And I do feel like there are guides for all of us that sort of work more with our past lives, have a knowledge of our many, many, many past lives. So I will invite them in also. So I'm going to shuffle now, and then we'll begin the reading after I lay down the cards. As you can see, I've put down 6 cards, 2 rows of 3. Okay, I've got 2 rows of 3, and what I feel like is that we're talking about 2 different lives. And again, I asked what past lives are most affecting this life. So the way that I work, as you may have seen in other videos, is simply to start talking about the card. And it's kind of like explaining to myself, like I am just talking it out. And then things start to come to me. And I'll often, especially in past life readings, will be drawn to an area. I know I always ask my guides and the guides of whoever I'm reading for about time and place, date and place, because I know that people want to know that. But often it's vague. Every once in a while, I'll hear like a specific year, um, but sometimes it's not as important. But I did ask that, so we may or may not get that. Um, the other thing I'll mention is that in this suit of cards, the Wands cards are called clubs. The Pentacles cards, which we don't have any of here, but they are coins cards in this deck. So let's go ahead and let me just start reading and see what we've got here. So first of all, this Four of Clubs. Now, as I said, these are Wands cards in the other deck, and Wands cards are so much about the things we care about, the things we love, our passionate energy. I mean, they're about doing, they're a creative force. So they are about like the things we bring into the world as unique and creative individuals. Now, this Four of Wands is rather, Four of Clubs in this deck is rather a celebratory card. It's talking about the ways in which we bring these sort of passions, the things we care about, the love that we have, our creative energy, into a space that includes other people. So it can also often talk about relationships, sometimes marriages, sometimes family situations, but it's very much a celebration card of these things. And I feel like, it's very interesting because this is very much a family card. It's talking about this past life that Trump had that was very family oriented. And, and being pulled toward, and it even looks a little bit with this house in the background here, but very much toward, and it's interesting because I know that his family is from here or from this area, but into sort of the Germany area. But this is very much earlier. This is, I want to say, the 18th century. It's like the to late 1700s. But it feels very Bavarian, right? And it talks about this loving family. And sometimes we have these lives that are called resting lives. That's how a lot of people refer to them. And there's this idea of just being able to have a life where you sort of just enjoy living, and not that it's free from trouble, but that it is free from some of these bigger challenges that we take on when we incarnate in this world. And this actually was supposed to be that kind of life for him. He was a man in this lifetime. He did have a wife. He did have either 2 or 3 children, and it's very much the scene that I'm seeing is very idyllic, very sort of pastoral. They're sort of outside the village, but because they have some land, but still within sort of easy access to a village. There's just a very happy feel to it, and it could have gone that way. Then you get this Wheel of Fortune card, right? And the Wheel of Fortune card is very much about the ups and downs of life. It talks about, the different aspects of life that we experience. And so, sometimes things are very good, and then of course things can happen. Now in this instance, it's interesting because this is how guides work through the cards, right? Because I can have all this knowledge of every bit of symbolism on this Wheel of Fortune card, but sometimes that's kind of neither here nor there. And in this case, it's kind of like that. I mean, it does talk a little bit about this card in general, but it's really, when you think of it, just think of the Wheel of Fortune. Think of how we think about it in the United States when we think about like the game show, right? Because it's very, very much about money. Now, in this lifetime, he was, I was going to say a farmer, but it doesn't feel that way. He had land, but it feels more like a merchant. There's some sort of exchange of goods. He may have even had some sort of like store in the village, if that's how it is. Well, yeah, that's kind of what it feels like, that kind of merchant. Um, and I want to go ahead and talk about this Two of Clubs before I start talking about the overall story here, because it's like a lot comes at once. So I want to bring this in just so we have the cards included in this story, and you can see sort of how I'm being brought to this story. But again, with these past life readings, it does come to me as kind of a story, and the more I talk about it, the more I get, and there's a lot of images. That's why I love doing them, because it's fascinating to me. So, Two of Clubs. If you can think of the Wands cards, when there's the two of the figure of sort of staring out at like the water, and he's got these two wands that talk about these things that he's that are important to him, right? And that are these passionate parts of him. Well, take a look at this Two of Clubs here. I mean, this figure is a little bit more. Um, uh, Here it feels, and in this instance, more grounded, more physical, right? And he's got these two things that he's passionate about, right? And they are things that sort of motivate him and move him forward in life. One of them is this idea of considering that the good things in life are family, being able to provide for your family, security. And again, this was a lifetime that was supposed to be sort of built on that. Sort of, let's just kind of go through this lifetime. You learn about things like love and family, but it is what we call like a resting lifetime. However, one of the other things, and he's still working through this, we'll talk about that more, but one of the other things that were important to him was status, accumulation, money. Um, I don't know anything, honestly, about the history of this time period, but there's something about his life that was, especially in his childhood, and this may have happened to his father in this lifetime, where there was a time of sort of deprivation. It almost feels like he felt, or the family felt, and maybe it actually was, that something unjust had happened. He had lost land, or he had lost a job opportunity or something, but it feels like they felt like it was very unjust, and it may have been. But it was this idea of having a little bit of deprivation, even though he had his family. This was a loving family, even like as he was a child, right? So he understood that love. He understood what love was about in this lifetime, and very much wanted to do the best for his wife and children, loved them very deeply. But there was this element of fearing deprivation. And um, part of what happens with that is this growth of fear, and fear is always a huge factor in, in sort of getting us off course in life or causing difficulties for us in life. And so what happened in this lifetime is he had the opportunity to gain some, it's like acquire some things, maybe for selling, maybe simply because he was a merchant, he had access to them. And it's like, what I'm seeing is Silas Marner. If you know that book, that's kind of this feeling of wanting to accumulate stuff and making sure that what he accumulated was safe. And it really did start out as this idea of caring for his family and making sure that his family, his children, his three kids, did not experience what he had experienced growing up, and didn't see sort of the fall from grace that his own father suffered. Sort of this embarrassment, sort of humiliating kind of situation. So he was very determined in that. But what happened in this lifetime is how he sort of ended up being able to do that was very dishonest. And not only it was very dishonest, it was cheating other people. So that he did have this accumulation of wealth, but in many ways it was secret. He was, and I think that's why I see Silas Marner's this idea of putting things away, hiding them away, like gold or whatever it was in this case, this accumulation. Um, but he knew he had it, right? So that made him feel good. He knew he had it. But in doing this, it became worse and worse. Like at first it was like, okay, I'll buy this stuff that I know, you cheated somebody for, but I'll get it at a good price. And then later it was kind of like, well, I can do this myself. I might be able to cheat people. Or there's a bigger person. There's someone who has more access to more. And then it got to the point where it was incredibly like exploitive of other people, literally stealing. And he didn't care. He was caught up in the accumulation, and until he hurt somebody, and this is a friend, not necessarily his wife and children. They were very much in the dark through most of this, but there was a friend, like a dear friend, like somebody who had helped him, and he ended up cheating him. And really causing him great harm. And the friend was kind of like, I can't believe you would do this. And it was kind of a reckoning for him. And yet he didn't make amends. It was kind of like, I can't, what am I going to do? Give it all back? There's nothing I can really do to set this right, that wouldn't like cause me a great deal of pain. So he just didn't. And the friend somehow died, either as a result of this, maybe from losing so much, maybe from suicide, or he went away. I mean, he's like gone, and he felt this very deeply, but he denied it. He not people didn't really know that he had been involved in this man's downfall. It feels like maybe the man was accused of stealing or something. Um, Somehow, what Trump in that lifetime had done came back to be visited on the head of this man, and he was blamed for it. And he was either literally sort of executed or killed or died in prison, or he committed suicide. But at any rate, Donald Trump was in this lifetime directly sort of responsible for all of that, and yet it was too big of a thing. He felt like it was too big of a thing to try and make amends. Right? It would reveal too much, and he would lose too much in the process. So he just didn't. He just kept quiet. He stopped a lot of what he was doing at that time, and sort of just went back to this sort of private life. But he had this store of wealth and sort of stolen goods or cheated goods or these things. Some of them he used as like merchandise in his store. Some of he traded. Some of it was found when he finally passed away. But he lived in this lie for his entire life. I would say that this, like the buildup and the incident, by the time that incident happened with the man, he was probably only in his 40s, his early 40s. So he lived the rest of his life in a lie. He raised his children sort of in a lie. Yeah. So what was supposed to be like sort of a quiet, restful life turned into a very convoluted and karmic driven life, right? When you have those kinds of things that you do and don't resolve them, you carry karma with you that you need to balance out. And that's the point of why this life is important in speaking about the life that Donald Trump leads now, because this is the thing. He carries with him a lot of karma, and he carries with him these same these same things that he's trying to overcome, right? Let's talk about this next life, and then we'll sort of wrap it up in these overall messages, because they sort of come through too. So again, you have a card that speaks very much about celebration and love. The Six of Cups. It's a very it's a lovely card that speaks here, especially in this deck, of of love, of sharing, of an accumulation of love. It does talk really about relationships here. Like this, you can see there's this feeling of this marriage here, this devotion to each other, right? And it's often a very celebration because it comes after a 5 cards, these 6 cards, and so the 5 cards are always challenging. So it's this idea of coming into a new space and feeling this sort of celebration, this sort of victory in a way. And here in this deck of cards, it also speaks very much about love, relationships, marriage, long-term devotion and caring. And then you get this Knight of Cups who rides in on this, steed, bringing this is literal knight in shining armor here, that talks about bringing in new love and riding in on this beautiful horse of sort of change and a possibility, right? But all related to love and relationships, as Cups cards are. And then you get the Nine of Clubs. Now, the Nine of Clubs are all about these things, again, that we're passionate about, that we care, that are our creative selves, that we bring into the world. And here, I'm sorry, I'm getting images, so I stopped for a second. So here in this Nine of Clubs, it talks about all of these things that are accumulated, the ways in which, sometimes about education, especially when I get them like the Nine of Wands when I do regular readings for people. So often talks about this accumulation of experience and knowledge, like education, and then literal like experience, the things that we've done, the work that we've done, the different things we've pursued in trying to bring about these things that we love. So we often talk about jobs, talk about our creative pursuits, all of those kinds of things. And this 9 has these like lined up, all of these things that you accumulated, and the figure in the card is sort of taking a rest, looking at everything that's accumulated. There's a little bit of a battle weariness to this figure, this idea of having been through a lot to accumulate this knowledge and these things and this creative possibility. So let's talk about the story here when we're speaking of this past life for Donald Trump. So again, it's interesting because it's very focused on relationships, on a particular relationship. I feel like this is a marriage situation. So the image that I got, and my guys will give me references so that I can understand time, place, or situation. The image that I just got is Fiddler on the Roof. So this is an idea of an arranged marriage that, try to see if he was male or female in this lifetime. Male. And this honestly, this feels like Russia. This is a long time ago. Very cold, muddy. The houses have like grass, or some kind of not grass, but the roofs are like twigs and stuff. Strong, but they're not, like we would think of in the West as the traditional house. It's very much a village scene. And yet he's very happy with this match. In fact, his family has sort of managed to make this match um, sort of above his what he kind of would have expected. He's a little bit of a nerd in some ways, I guess you would say. He feels very studious and he feels very religious. Now, this could be some sort of, and this may be why I got Fiddler on the Roof, that reference, because it may actually have been Jewish. Uh, in fact, I think that's probably what it was. And you know what? He was studying to be a rabbi, I think is what it is. And this daughter that he marries, that is arranged for him, his family was, her family was very sort of content with that idea, happy with that idea of marrying a scholar, a religious scholar, and someone who's going to be, this sort of religious figure. She was not. She was not as content because she was very pretty, and he was, he was not a bad guy. He was seriously, it's interesting though, because much of his religiousness had to do with scholarship rather than heartfelt belief. But he's not a bad guy. He's just a little bit of a, like we would think of as kind of a, schlubby guy, kind of a nerdy guy. And that wasn't appealing to her. Still, they were married. And then you have this Knight of Cups. Now, I keep hearing in my head Cossacks, so I don't know if that's helping us set the time period, or if this sort of Knight of Cups figure speaks a little bit about that now. No, he wasn't a... Well, let me think here. What's going on here? So the whole Cossack reference, that's a time period thing for us. That's to help us understand time period. And again, I'll leave that to you because I'm not sure about that. I feel like there were maybe waves in different time periods. This could be, when is this? 19th century. So it's actually a little later than the other one. I thought it was going to be earlier. I'm not sure though, because it feels very backwards. The village, what we would consider. I'll kind of leave that with you but I did hear that. But this Knight of Cups is not that. Knight of Cups. So here they are, this sort of young married couple. She did what she's supposed to do. She doesn't hate him. She's just not what she would have picked for herself. Very devoted though to her parents. She'll do what they ask, and he does have sort of this prospects of being this well-respected member of the community, and that's something. But then this person comes into the village. He has something to do with the governmental hierarchy, or maybe it's even like royalty, low level, but still he's dashing in that way, right? Very different. He's not Jewish. He's definitely not. And he sort of rides in and he just steals her heart. Again, she's very pretty. And I feel like, because what I'm seeing is, and I know this is symbolic, but like sweeping her up with one hand and riding off with her. She actually deserts him and rides off with this person. I don't know to follow what happened with her. That's not like important necessarily. What is important is this humiliation and this, for somebody who's like very sincere about his beliefs, in that he believes that he's trying to be a good person and he's trying to do the things that he should do, and he's very interested, very, very interested in this religious study, wants very much to be a believer, even though it's, he's not, it's not heartfelt completely, but he feels like he can work toward that. And he feels like he's doing everything right in many ways, in most ways. And this beautiful girl that he is married to, that is arranged for him to marry to, into her family, she into his, is like this proof of that, proof that he's sort of on the right track, that he's doing the right thing, that yes, if you do these things, God rewards you. And then this crazy thing, I mean, it's absolutely unheard of and outlandish that this person would come into the village. Not that he's completely unknown, because I feel like he's somebody of sort of stature, and then really whisk her off her feet and take her away, never really to return. I feel like they go somewhere that's like a city instead of this very rural, very sort of backwards village. So she's just gone, and he is devastated, just devastated. And he really loses, I was going to say he loses his faith, but that's not true. What happens is his faith turns to anger, and he gets into this, everything that he reads and sees and does takes the form of almost vengeance. Like he's just so angry, and he uses his scholarship to actually in many ways hurt other people, by judging them through this scholarship. And he really has like this nine of clubs, all of this ability, this all these things he's learned and known and done, and when he pauses to consider it, he does so after his wife is gone. And so what he sees is falsehood, and yet he can't let it go, so he manipulates it, right? And he hurts many people because he feels that he's been wronged. And, obviously he kind of has, but he isn't able to move away from that feeling. And so his hurt and dejection turn to anger. So let's take these together, because that hurt and that dejection that turns to anger, and also power. I mean, because when you are this looked on as this scholar, this rabbi of this village, or very influential, I should say, within this community, you wield a certain amount of power. And when you're angry, you tend to, when you hurt and when you're angry, you can very much use that in detrimental ways against people, against your own soul and your heart, and you lose the direction in which you thought you were going. You lose direction at all. Everything changes for you, and that's what happened. He became very angry and bitter and vindictive to so many people, very caustic, but especially bitter, and especially obviously about love and relationships. And yeah, it hurt a lot of people, but mostly it hurt him because he was alone. He was alone in his hatred. Although people wanted to reach out and help him, he chose to sort of wallow in this hatred and never recover. And he did eventually die alone and broken and, disrespected, which is the worst. People just lost their respect for him, and that was a huge blow as well, that he blamed everything that he did on this wife and the noble kind of guy. So you can see how these two lives relate to this life, because in this life, again, he's had this sort of rejection, and much of this came from his parents, but from others too, all along the line. And instead of dealing with it or rising above it, he has become mired in it, and it fuels his anger and desire for revenge on people, constantly working to feel like I showed you, I'm better than you, and I showed you, I'll show you who's in charge here. That's his whole motivation, and it comes from anger, and it comes from hurt, and it comes from deprivation, emotional deprivation. And then the other thing that drives him is this sort of this greed. But that's, they're joined, because really when you're so greedy, what you're looking for so often is justification of your own existence, and trying in that same way, a little bit different, to feel better than somebody else, and also being able to oppress others, right? And it's fueled. And the thing is, and here's the lesson of these two lives is, we go through these things lifetime after lifetime after lifetime until we learn the lesson. And we'll come into a life of our own free will wanting to learn these lessons. Like I want to work on these things. I want to work on being less afraid. I want to work on being kinder or more devoted to other people. All these things. But when we accumulate karma, because the way that we don't meet those challenges, then we have to come back and find balance. And we have to learn to deal with these things. The fear, the deprivation, the feeling of equality, because that's a big driving factor. When you don't feel equal, you seek to feel better than. And that's a driving factor for him in these lifetimes that we've talked about, but in his lifetime now. And these lifetimes were very difficult for him. He's had others that are similar. There's more. There are few, I shouldn't say many, there are few other lives where it's these same situations of dealing with this, not being able to love yourself enough to overcome this idea that I have to be better than you, that I have to sort of keep you down and defeat you. And when you don't understand that love for yourself, you certainly don't understand justice and equality. So he's working on those as well. But there was very much this feeling of having to heal after those lifetimes and sort of really evaluate and look and heal, because they were very difficult, and he's very confused, like coming back into this place, this non-physical place where equality is, of course, all there is. We're all one, and it took some time to sort of heal from these lifetimes. And he feels like he was very eager, and his guides were eager for him, to come back and prove that he could do this right. Knowing and being very cautioned by his guides to say, this could happen. You're going to have the things happen to give you the opportunity to overcome them, but you can also be caught up in them again. And of course, we know what happened. The universe is, or the non-physical world is very fast, high light vibration, and coming into the physical world, it's very dense, and it's very easy to fall back into these patterns, which is what he's done. And it's heartbreaking in many ways to his guides. Not frustrating, because they understand that this happens, but they too were hopeful that this time around things would be different. This time around things would be different. Now, I will say that, like his father, especially his father, man, some of the other people in his soul group that tend to incarnate together, there's these same things. They're going through these same karmic lessons again and again and again. And it's difficult. They'll keep doing it until they get it right. But there is this feeling of like returning to the non-physical world and being like, again, right? It's interesting that with these lifetimes, the challenges in many ways have become bigger. And one of the reasons he came into this life lifetime, as this figure that he is, was feeling like, I can deal with a lot of karma in this lifetime if I have these many responsibilities, these many people that I can influence, right? Coming into a lifetime as sort of this famous figure, there is this feeling of being able to correct a lot of karma, or balance, better word, a lot of karma at once, in one lifetime. And so we chose this sort of grandiose, almost bigger than life, really feeling like this. And the feeling coming into this life was, in this big life, I can do so much good, and really balance these scales. And, you know, obviously we've seen that this sort of spectacular failure, that, and it's affected so many people. The karma here is so huge, going forward, like some of the great, or worst, most challenged figures in history, that go back into the non-physical world, and really in many ways have to have their energy almost like restructured and rebuilt before they can try and balance out this karma. And here we are left, sort of in its wake. The challenge for us is for, our own, souls, our own, eternal selves, to who wanted to come in at this time, knew some of the possibilities. Nothing obviously is set in stone. I mean, that's why we have free will. We all have our free will. But the idea was, we came in at this time knowing that some of these, things were possible, even probable, and we willingly stepped in. So part of our challenge is not to be, caught up in the density of the earth and react in ways that, that mimic some of these worst traits of Donald Trump and others, to sort of rise above it, serve each other, help each other, reach our highest potential, and thereby, not accumulating any sort of bad karma, and actually, growing and learning and expanding, in our knowledge and understanding of ourselves, our souls, the universe, and bringing love into the universe, basically, because all of these sort of joyous things, creative things, they're all actually sort of, different ways of saying love. So that is our challenge, but it does help to know, hopefully, that, within this very human person that we're all dealing with, lies a soul who, like us, is trying to, learn and grow in the best of ways. And although he and many others in life all the time, stumble, and, sometimes stumble greatly, and sometimes take many people along with them as they stumble. There is a reason, there is, reconciliation, there is balance. There's always balance in the world. There's not judgment in the way that we think of it, but there is balance. And that really is, the foundation of the universe: balance and love. And so many of these words that we use, like, joy, and even balance, growth, they really are different ways of saying and expressing the idea of love, which is forward movement without judgment, with, equality, knowing that we are all one, right? So, we expand and grow, and in doing so, we help ourselves, our own souls, and the universe, because we're all tied together. And this is the purpose of the universe: to expand and grow in joy and love. It's a simple purpose, but it's a beautiful one, obviously. So there you have it. There we have two of Donald Trump's past lives, two that are influencing this life. So it's very interesting. I do hope that it gives us some insight and even some help as we go forward in our own lives. we have so much personal power in how we respond to things, and also how we join together in our lives, in our communities, in our families, as a nation, as a planet, how we join together to move forward in this idea of love, hope, help, cooperation. So that's our, great joy. So thank you for watching. Thank you for seeing how I do these past life readings. Hopefully it's helpful. Hopefully it's interesting. It's kind of fascinating to me. I wish I could show you better all the things that I sort of see in my head, but hopefully I was able to express fairly well some of the things that I was seeing. So I do have more videos coming up. I do hope you'll subscribe. If you'd like any kind of reading from me, you can go to my website, cardvoyant.com. And until our next video, until our next Psychic Sisters video that will be coming up as well, I will just say once again, please take care of yourself. Please take care of others. And until next time, bye for now.